Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 19 of How to HR. Hi, I'm Kristy-Lee. I host the weekly video series each week here on Facebook and on our YouTube channel to help bring you some real practical strategies, tactics and tips when it comes to building and managing your team. How are you? I hope you're having a fantastic week, whatever you're up to. It is absolutely freezing where I am today, so you can see I'm quite rugged up. I don't love this weather, but anyway, it is what it is. So I hope you're all having a great week. On today's episode of How to HR, we are talking about harnessing hybrid teams. This is the new way that we're all working at the moment. So what is a hybrid team and why is it important? Really what we're talking about with hybrid teams is when people are working from a mixture of locations. Now, we all know that COVID, we were thrust into this world of working from home, which many people thought would be totally impossible, but in fact was entirely fine. And for many businesses, they will now not return to a full structure of in-office work for all of their team. It will become much more mixed and fluid, multiple modality style of working. And I, for one, think it's absolutely great. Employees have been wanting more flexibility at work for many, many years, and certainly the request to be able to work remotely from home, from a satellite office, from a shared workspace, somewhere closer to home, has been something that many employees have been really, really trying to forge forward with, or, probably really considered the last 5 years, but a little longer than that, certainly as well. We've seen that change in technology I've been in business 15 years, and the change in technology over that time has really allowed for a much more flexible model of work. Whilst it wasn't always possible to have our staff work from home because it needed to be attached to servers, and the whole dialing in via VPN networks was a nightmare and slow and clunky, with the increase in the use of cloud-based technologies, it is actually really practical and possible now in a very secure way for people to be working from different locations. Now, we saw this trend start, and we saw some businesses kind of allowing it and embracing it, and others really resisted it. And by and large, it was a matter of sometimes some people would get permission to work from home. And it became a real us and them. Oh, you're a remote worker, or you're the, everyone else is in the office. It was very much largely a very segregated form of hybrid work when it did exist prior to COVID. But now, fast forward 18 months, and here we are with many businesses really considering the fact that they may not have everyone in one central location all of the time ever again. I think it's going to allow for a much, much more productive, vibrant workforce. It's going to mean people that previously could not enter the workforce because the logistics of it all, think about parents, for example, just didn't work. It's going to mean we have access to better talent that more closely aligns to what we need in our businesses, because we can hire people anywhere. They don't have to be located in the next suburb or in the same city as us. If the best person for the job is interstate, that's no longer a barrier. So I'm really passionate about this because I feel like it's great for business, and I actually think that what's happened in the last 18 months has pushed us forward years. I think it would have taken us 10 years to get to where we are now for businesses. So we've taken a shortcut, not by means that we want, but that's how it is. And I think if we can really embrace this hybrid modality of work in a very effective way, then we've got every opportunity to create better teams within our business, to have more productive businesses, and ultimately to have more profitable businesses, because that's what we are in business for. However, I know the transition into this hybrid model of work has not been simple or smooth for everyone, and many businesses are still trying to get their head around how to make it work effectively. They know they want to, they can see the benefits, they can see the fact that the employees do not want to come back to the office full time, but how do you make it work really effectively? So when we're talking about this hybrid model of work, I think one of the important things to point out here is we're no longer talking about an us and them. It's no longer this is the office team, this is the remote team. This is a much more fluid way of working, where people will work in different rhythms, in different ways, at different locations over different periods of time. most people will probably be looking at a mixed model where they will spend some time in a central location, the office or head office or whatever it looks like, and then some other time at home. Others will be predominantly working from home, or these co-working spaces are very popular. We saw them pop up pre-COVID and they didn't do amazingly well. And personally, I couldn't work in one of those places. I would find the distraction and the lack of privacy really problematic for the sort of work I do. But some people, extroverts in particular, who love the social connection, will work brilliantly in those kind of co-working spaces. So this isn't just home and office. This is anywhere that we can be working. And this is going to be a much more fluid way that we work moving forward. It's going to mean that there's no necessarily set structure, that things are going to change and move much more fluidly. It's going to mean that different people might change the way they work over different periods of time to suit their current living arrangements, their current caring arrangements, what's working for them in terms of what they're doing outside of work as well, to ensure that they can keep this flow happening. So I am passionate about it because I think it opens up huge opportunities for us as businesses to attract and retain the best possible talent and to build businesses that are strong enough to withstand however we want to work and that allow us to be more profitable in the process. But how do we, getting back to today's topic of how to HR, how do we harness these hybrid teams? How do we get the most out of people working in all these different locations? How do we make sure we don't mess it up as well? Because obviously there are some tricks here. There's some tricky situations we're going to be dealing with. One of the key downsides that we see with hybrid teams, or that people report when they're working in this hybrid model, is this disconnection from the social fabric of work, which is very important to engagement, to staff retention, to team morale and motivation. So there's no doubt that we have to be conscious of the things that hybrid workplaces kind of take away from us. So we need to work through all of that. We also need to work through the fact that when we're working from home, sometimes we have employees that are going to hit burnout because they're overworking, because they no longer have that step away from the workplace and return into their home life because it's here all the time for them. So there are some tricks we need to work through, absolutely, in making this work. But today I want to share with you 3 strategies that I think can make a real difference towards harnessing the hybrid teams in your workplace. So these are 3 key things that all of you can do, super easy, very quick to implement, and things that you can tweak to really suit your particular business. So to really tailor towards what works for you. Okay, so the first and probably the most obvious one I want to give you is that communication is king. This is no different to when you had people in your workplace and you were all together in the one site all of the time. The best teams, the best businesses have excellent communication pathways and channels in their business. When you're dealing with a hybrid team, you just need to reconsider how you're communicating and where and when you're communicating. And the key thing here is to make sure that you are not communicating differently to those in the office compared to those working away from the office. I've been on Clubhouse a lot recently, and if you haven't caught up our conversations there, I encourage you to do so. You can come over and follow and be part of the People Powered Business Club. But each week recently, colleague Juliet Robinson and I have been holding space for a discussion around leadership. The discussions are called the Leadership Lounge. In fact, there's another one today at 5:30 if you want to join us. But we've been discussing this whole hybrid work model. And one of the key things that we've been chatting about with those that have joined us in the room and joining the conversation has been around the communication that happens in the corridors, in the kitchen, after the meeting has finished, and how we can really consciously make sure we as leaders don't continue to have that communication only with those in the office and actively involve those that are also working remotely from the office. Because you know what it's like. You're in a meeting, things are getting bandied around, and you close the meeting, and then something occurs to you, and in the hallway, on the way out the door from the meeting, you say, hey, I just thought of this. Do you think this will work to solve that problem? And you go about doing it. The problem you've got there is that that communication is only open to people in the office. So we need to be conscious as leaders to pause that communication and say, hey, I've just come up with an idea that I think will work to solve that problem. Let's get Jane on the line so we can chat through it. So you're involving the people that would have been involved had they been in the office, but sometimes it's going to make a conscious decision on our part to halt the communication, to pause momentarily and bring everyone together again. Jump on a Zoom call, pick up the phone and have a discussion openly on the phone. So thinking about how we communicate, I think really leveraging our video communication technologies is critical. And look, everyone jumped on Zoom and we all did fine during the pandemic, but you must use that going forward as well. It's that face-to-face connection that really gets people involved and interested. Don't forget too, the phone is pretty powerful. Picking up and having a phone call rather than a scheduled Zoom meeting, off the cuff, is also very powerful in our communication. So really remembering that communication is king and being consistent with how we communicate with those in the office as well as those working more remotely. I think the other thing that's really important from a communication perspective is finding ways to create opportunities for communication that aren't formal meetings, that allow for this social connection to still occur. Now, there was lots of whole Friday drinks on Zoom when the pandemic hit. That stuff's not going to work now that we're returning to normal life. But there will be ways that you can build in time for more casual connection within the communication. It might be allowing the Zoom meeting for the team meeting to be opened a half an hour earlier or a half an hour later as a bit of a drop-in session for people just to have a chat. It could be about creating a space for a weekly team lunch that's held online so that everyone can participate no matter where they are working from. But just think about ways that might work for your business in terms of creating an opportunity for that social connection to continue even though the team isn't together all of the time. So communication is my first tip. My second tip, which is potentially a little more challenging, is to create a remote first culture. And what I mean by that is recreating things so that it's not a in-office first culture, but rather a remote first culture. So traditionally when we've had this mix of workers that are on site and away from site, everything is centered around those that are on site, and then we kind of tack in the off-site people. We'll call them in for this, or we'll keep them in the loop about that. But that is the secondary thought. Switch that on its head. Create all of your structures, your processes, your meetings, your ways of doing things around having a remote first culture. So structure things for the intent that someone is not in the office. And then if they happen to be in the office, they can just dial in the same way. But if you adopt this remote first culture where everything is based around the fact that everyone is remote, then you're going to ensure that you don't have this us and them, because someone that's in the office can participate in the same way as someone who's remotely, but someone that's remote can't necessarily participate in the same way that someone can from in the office. So if you switch everything on its head and approach work as if everyone is remote, and structure meetings, processes, everything that way, you're going to really remove this whole us and them, which can be problematic. And it's also going to mean that those that are working remotely feel not just included, but like they are just part of the team, part of the furniture, so to speak. So it's going to create much better consistency. It's just going to work a whole lot better. I know businesses that when they have a team meeting, no matter where you're working from, you dial in on Zoom. So you could be in the office, or you could be working from home, you could be interstate, you could be anywhere. You dial in on Zoom, so it's an even playing field. Everyone is on the call together in the same format. So that can work, absolutely. Think about those kind of things that you could implement where remote is the norm and everything else just works around that. So that's my second tip, create a remote first culture. And my third tip, and this is critical if you're going to effectively manage hybrid teams, you need to focus on results and output rather than time and input. If you are measuring performance based on how long a bum is on a seat in an office, it is not effective. You are not measuring performance. You are measuring attendance. Attendance doesn't make profitable businesses. Performance, results, outputs makes profitable businesses. Now, this was probably the biggest challenge for many businesses mid-COVID, and not everyone's got it right yet. And I get it, it's a big change for many of us, but you really need to spend some time here. If you're not sure where to start, talk to your team. Ask them what success looks like in their role. Ask them how they think their performance should be measured. You'd be surprised how honest they're going to be and how much insight they're going to give you. Figure out what success looks like for every role, every day in your business. Know that that's what you're focusing on. If someone can achieve the same result in 6 hours that they can in 8 another day, why would you work the extra 2 hours? The result is the same. Measure performance and output and results. Do not measure input and time. They're not the same things and they do not yield the same results. The sooner you can switch that mentality, the sooner it's not going to matter where someone's working from, because you'll be able to measure the results that they are achieving. And if they're achieving that from somewhere or at the desk next to you, it does not matter as long as it is getting achieved. So this can be as simple as doing that. The other things you build into here is you want to build trust in your team. Trust that they're going to support each other to achieve the results as a team. Trust that they're going to work well as a team together. So getting this trust in the workplace is critical. Simon Sinek talks loads about trust in teams. So does Brené Brown. It is fundamental to high-performing teams that there is a culture of trust. So setting these expectations. Also, as I suggested at the beginning of today's How to HR, the other thing you want to do is make sure you've got some boundaries and parameters in place. You don't want to be measuring results that is going to take someone 18 hours a day to achieve. It's not effective. You don't want to be pushing a culture of overwork, of no boundaries between home and work life. You really want to be creating that opportunity for third space to exist. That's the pause in between home and work, in between work task 1 and work task 2, where they can recoup, recalibrate and focus on what's ahead. So this is also about creating some parameters and boundaries to ensure your staff aren't overworking as well. So 3 tips for today. Communication is king. Create a remote first work culture and focus on results and outputs rather than inputs and time. They are my top tips for harnessing hybrid teams. I truly believe many businesses will never, ever go back to how things were. And I think it is a great thing for everyone. We're going to have better workplaces. We're able to attract the best and the brightest for our business, no matter where they're located. And we're going to have more profitable, more productive workplaces and businesses. So it's a good result all round. That is it from this week's episode of How to HR. I hope you've enjoyed that. As I said, if you're on Clubhouse and you'd like to join in the conversation with Juliet Robinson and I, we'd love to see you there, hear you there. 5:30 p.m. this afternoon, we'll be over in the People Powered Business Club inside the Leadership Lounge discussion room, talking about self-awareness as leaders this afternoon. And every week on a Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. and Thursday afternoon at 5:30 p.m, that is where you will find us. If you're not sure about Clubhouse, you need an invitation, drop a comment below and I will get it sorted for you. Until then, I'll see you on next week's episode of How to HR. If there is ever a topic you would like me to cover on a How to HR episode, something you're interested in, something you've got a challenge with your team, or just some area of the legislation or of managing teams that you would like to know more about, let me know. Drop me a comment, send us a message, and I'll be more than happy to cover that for you. Have a fabulous week, and I look forward to seeing you next week for episode 20 of How to HR.